The text came at 6:12 a.m. on a Monday. "I'm not coming back. The account is empty. I'm sorry." By noon, the landlord had taped a notice to the door, 7 days to pay or vacate, and the balance in her local credit union app read 43.17. At 38, Sarah realized the life she'd built in Phoenix had vanished overnight, and the sound of her daughter's breathing in the next room suddenly felt like the heaviest responsibility on earth. Before that morning, the Delgado apartment in South Phoenix ran on small rituals and modest hopes. On school days, Sarah braided 12-year-old Mia's hair at the kitchen counter while 8-year-old Lila rehearsed spelling words, the desert sun already warming the blinds. She worked part-time in office admin for a property maintenance company, steady if unglamorous, and patched the rest of the schedule with rides to soccer practice, second-hand uniform shopping, and coupons taped to the fridge. Money was never abundant, but there were plans. A summer day trip to the canyon, a new mattress before the monsoon season brought leaks. They had talked about life insurance, about a real emergency fund, about getting more serious with the budget. Not this month, they'd say, and then let another month slide away. The last normal weekend played out like any other, laundry flapping on a line strung across the little patio, syrup on pancakes, cardboard boxes held together with too much tape for a school project. On Sunday night, the sky turned molten over the South Mountain Range, and Sarah believed in the very ordinary way you believe your tomorrow will look like today, that Monday would start with coffee commute emails and a long mental list of next steps. Instead, there was a silent bedroom and a half-empty closet. The toothbrush was gone. The shirt she'd bought him last year was missing from the hanger. She called. Straight to voicemail. She called his brother. He didn't pick up. She checked the glove compartment where they sometimes stuffed receipts and found a handful with recent dates, gas stations, a motel, a cash withdrawal of $400 2 days earlier. The air in the apartment felt stale, thick with the ghost of arguments they hadn't had, with the slow erosion of trust she'd tried not to see. By afternoon, Mia came home from school and dropped her backpack with a thud. "Where's Dad?" she asked. Not alarmed yet, more annoyed the way kids are when a routine gets nudged. "He left early," Sarah said. "We'll talk after homework." She lasted until dinner. The spaghetti sauce scorched because she'd forgotten to stir it, and the smell turned the air sweet and angry. She told them he had gone away for a while, that the grown-up parts were complicated, that it wasn't their fault. Mia stared at her plate. Lila said, "But who's going to do the silly voices?" And that was when the room started to blur. 2 days later, a collections letter arrived with a number that didn't make sense, $3,116 on a medical bill she'd never seen. Another envelope showed a past due balance for a personal loan she hadn't known he'd taken out, $8,200 at 19.9%. She traced each line with her finger until the reality arranged itself, cruel and crisp. Income $1,160 after taxes from her part-time admin job. Expenses that crowded the page like a swarm. The math didn't work. It wasn't even close. At night, the apartment settled and clicked. The refrigerator hummed. A car alarm barked once and fell silent. Sarah lay awake and watched the bank app glow in the dark. 27:03 after an overdraft fee hit she hadn't anticipated. Her hands shook when she opened the mail. She started letting unknown numbers ring to voicemail. She learned the precise weight of dread. Friends drifted. No malice, just the long distance of people who aren't sure what to say. Her mother, 2 states away, offered love and prayer and a spare room that wouldn't hold 3 bodies and a life. The maintenance company cut her hours until workloads pick up, which was not a plan and not an answer. On the 6th day, she stood in line at a grocery store with generic cereal, milk, and a bag of rice. The total flashed 14 down 2018. She swiped the debit card and held her breath as if breath could change numbers. Approved. She walked to the car and sat with both hands on the wheel, the sweat already starting at her hairline in the August heat. and knew this was not survival. This was the beginning of a collapse. Her name was Sarah Delgado. She lived in Phoenix, Arizona, south of the river, a line of palm trees outside a stucco complex that looked cheerful at sunset and tired by morning. She had 2 daughters who needed dinner and shoes and certainty. She had $23,956 in debt she hadn't signed up for and $0 in savings. She didn't know it yet, but a paperback from the library and an old laptop in her closet would become the tools that rebuilt everything. And the first step in that rebuilding would begin in a fluorescent-lit break room, where humiliation did its work and, quietly, stubbornly, a decision formed. The first week after the text was triage, she called the landlord and negotiated, voice steady in a way that cost her everything. "I can pay $600 Friday, the rest by the 15th. He didn't promise grace, but he removed the notice. She sold the television for $120 on a neighborhood app. She canceled the streaming service, the music subscription, the monthly yoga class she'd barely used. She took a notebook, spiral-bound, bent cover, and wrote rent, $1,180 at the top of a page. Underneath, utilities, $147, car, $279, insurance, $132, groceries, $250 if she was careful. The numbers didn't care about her effort. By Wednesday, an overdraft landed like a hammer. $35 gone because the car insurance auto pay hit a day early. A creditor left a voicemail at 8:03 a.m., then another at 6:12 p.m. "This is an attempt to collect a debt," the voice said, smooth and remote, as if it were explaining the weather on a day the sky had fallen. She applied for everything: office admin roles, receptionist, front desk at a clinic, data entry. "We've decided to move forward with other candidates," the emails replied. Then, standing under a sun-bleached "Help Wanted" sign on the south side, she filled out an application for a large retail chain that needed overnight stockers. At the warehouse distribution center off the interstate, the hiring manager said, "Can you lift 50 pounds?" And she nodded because the correct answer was yes, and later she would pay for that yes with ibuprofen and hot baths. They called back the next day, $12.25 an hour, 38 hours a week if she was lucky. The uniform was a high-visibility vest and steel-toe shoes she bought used for $20 from a co-worker. Her manager, a man with a perfect clipboard and a condescending smile, liked to say, "This isn't complicated, folks," and then give contradictory instructions. The freezer section felt like punishment. The loading dock felt like a kiln when the afternoon heat pushed against the metal doors. The math stood at the end of every shift like a bouncer. 12.25 x 38 hours, 465 150, a week before taxes, 1,824 a month after. Humiliation arrived with a tap on the shoulder. The manager corrected her in front of everyone. "Delgado, labels facing out. Is this your first day?" A customer snapped fingers at her in a bright aisle. "Hey, you, get me a ladder." And she felt the familiar heat climb her neck. A co-worker laughed about someone too old to be learning new tricks, not aiming it at her and somehow hitting her square in the chest. On Thursday, she parked 2 blocks from the apartment so the tow truck searching for delinquent cars might miss hers. She desold the wedding ring for $240 and a coffee maker for $10 and the nicer set of dishes for $25. She kept the girls fed: pasta, canned tomatoes, a sack of oranges that tasted like summer. She skipped meals when they weren't tea-looking and drank water from a glass with a chip at the rim. The apartment smelled like instant noodles and bleach. She washed their school uniforms in the bathtub, knuckles red from wringing, because the laundromat ate quarters she couldn't spare. A neon-lit check-cashing place pulsed on the corner near the bus stop. She stood outside one afternoon, reading the sign advertising fast advances, the fees spelled out in small, confident font. She went home instead and counted out $42 in singles and quarters on the table, then put $10 back in her wallet so she wouldn't panic at the gas pump. The breaking point arrived, stupid and small. A $4.29 charge she'd forgotten, a school fundraiser ticket, triggered another overdraft. The bank app showed $39.79, and she locked the bathroom door, sat on the tile floor with her back against the tub, and cried with her hand over her mouth so the girls wouldn't hear. Her chest hitched, snot slicked her palm. The faucet dripped with cruel metronome regularity. She cried until the room narrowed to a pinpoint, until all she could hear was the sound of her own breath trying to become steady. How do I survive this? That night, Mia stood in the doorway. "Mom," she whispered, Are we poor now?" "We're having a hard time," Sarah said. "It won't always be like this." The certainty cost her more than she could afford, and she paid it anyway, because that's what mothers do when the world tilts. In the break room a few days later, a flyer was taped crooked above a microwave that always smelled faintly like burned popcorn. Free community workshops, budgeting basics, job training, small business tools, South Phoenix Library. Someone had underlined free 3 times, as if underlining could conjure breath into a drowning person. A co-worker, Renee, who had the kindest eyes in the building, said, "They helped my cousin get a certification. Not fancy, but it led to a real job." That night, when the girls were sleeping and the desert radiated heat through the walls, Sarah pulled the dusty laptop from the back of the closet. It took 7 minutes to wake up. She connected to the neighbors' internet they shared, out of pity and stubborn community, and she searched free courses, bookkeeping, certificates, Community College Phoenix. At 11:47 p.m., sitting cross-legged on a carpet that smelled like old dust, she clicked Browse Programs on the Community College website. Her hands shook. She didn't believe this would work, but she was out of other options. And that was the decision. Weeks 1-8, the first steps. The late-night searches became a lifeline. She learned that bookkeeping, the quiet, disciplined art of tracking money, could be studied through a 12-month certificate that cost $1,480 if she paid on a plan. The library offered access to an online learning platform for free. A counselor at the community college told her about a payment plan that wouldn't drown her and suggested used books. She found the required text secondhand for $15 with highlighter scars she decided were a blessing. A budget happened in pencil on the first of the month. She labeled envelopes. Food, $250, gas, $120, misc, $30. When the food envelope was empty, there were rice and beans, and the kind of creative meals mothers invent with a can opener and a promise. She called a national credit card company and said calmly, "I want to avoid default. Can we reduce the interest rate?" After an hour of holds and transfers, they dropped it from 22.4% to 15.9% and set a hardship plan. She negotiated with the utility company for a budget billing plan. She asked the landlord for a $25 reduction for 3 months in exchange for handling minor hallway sweeping. He grunted and said yes. Her days became an assembly line of effort. Mornings, get the girls ready, braids, breakfast, walk to school. Day, lift, stock, sweat, swallow pride. Evening, homework at the kitchen table, dinner that tried to be enough. Night, after dishes, after "Can you check my math?" after "I can't find my purple crayon," she opened the laptop at 10:12 p.m. and studied accounts receivable until her eyes burned. She fell asleep on the page sometimes, a crescent of drool linking her to terms that would one day pay the bills. She picked the debt snowball because she needed small victories more than mathematical perfection. $312 on a store card became the enemy. She paid $25, then $30, then found another $20 by selling a chair she didn't love. And one night she pressed submit payment, and the balance read 0.0. She sat very still. She exhaled. The room didn't change, but she did. Months 2 to 12. Small wins and learning. The first A on an exam arrived on a gust of relief. She sat in the parking lot and smiled so hard her cheeks hurt, the paper trembling in her hands. I am not broken, she thought. I can learn. A co-worker from the warehouse, Renee, ran a small cleaning business on weekends. My receipts are a mess, she said. Could you help me, make sense of it? I can pay a little. Sarah built a simple spreadsheet on a Saturday. Income, expenses, bank deposits lined up with weeks. 3 hours, $60 cash. It wasn't enough to fix anything, but it was proof. A maintenance tech from her old office said his brother had a landscaping side gig and needed help tracking mileage and invoices. She charged $25 an hour and apologized for charging at all. He paid her with thanks and brought tamales his mother had made. You saved me hours, he said, which sounded like wealth. The emergency fund started as $25 transferred to a savings account that paid almost nothing and felt like everything. It grew to $100, then $250, then back down to $50 when the car needed a new belt. She didn't close the account. She fed it scraps. It was a stubborn plant in bad soil. She listened to a budgeting podcast on the bus, learned words like index fund and IRA, wrote them in the margins of her notebook with question marks. One Sunday afternoon, she and Mia sat with the budget spreadsheet. See this column? Earnings. This one? Expenses. And this number at the bottom is what we're saving for the future. Mia asked 3 sharp questions and then said, So, we could plan on purpose? Yes, Sarah said. Exactly that. Setbacks came like monsoon squalls. Sudden, violent. The car needed $386 in repairs. Lila spiked a fever and Sarah missed a shift, losing $98 in take-home pay. An instructor returned an assignment with a terse note. This is incomplete. Follow instructions. She cried in the car, palms pressed to her eyes, and then went back in and asked for help. A client paid late. A client ghosted her. A friend said, Maybe this is too much at your age. And she swallowed the sting and kept learning. The choice was not glamorous, quit or keep going. She kept going. Months 12 to 24, momentum. The email came at 7:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. Congratulations, you have successfully completed the bookkeeping certificate program. She sat down on the kitchen floor, the old linoleum cool under her calves, and let herself cry toward the good for once. She printed the certificate at the library and taped it above the desk she and the girls had rescued from the curb one spring. Referrals trickled and then steadied. An auto shop owner needed monthly reconciliations. A home baker wanted help tracking orders and cost of goods. A barber who cut hair out of a small storefront on Central Avenue asked if she could make sense of his last year for taxes. She charged $45 an hour, then $60. She was terrified of each new quote and sent it anyway. An average month brought $700 to $100 from client work. She paid off the smallest credit card, $740, and then the next, $320. She took a screenshot of the $1,000 emergency fund balance and texted it to herself with a row of exclamation marks. She bought Mia a pair of sneakers at full price and felt something unclench in her throat. The mindset moved from I'm drowning to I'm swimming in deep water and I've learned to breathe. She negotiated her cell phone bill down $22 a month. She called the collections agency on the medical bill and worked out a settled amount over 6 months with no interest. She started an IRA with $50 a month, an act of faith that seemed laughable until the balance crawled upward and became a story she told herself about a gentler future. One night, after she'd raised her rates and survived it, she told her daughters, I said yes to myself today. Mia rolled her eyes in the fond way 12-year-olds do when their mothers get sentimental. By the end of the second year, she reduced her warehouse hours to weekends only. She had 7 steady clients and 3 more on a wait list. Monthly income ranged $2,600 to $3,400 from bookkeeping alone. The emergency fund sat at $3,800. One major debt remained, that personal loan she hadn't taken but had to shoulder. It was shrinking like a shadow near noon. "Mom," Mia said one evening, fresh from a science fair ribbon, "you seem different." "I'm learning," Sarah said, "and I'm not done." She was tired. She was still scared. But for the first time in 2 years, she wasn't drowning. She was swimming, and the shore, impossible distant, was finally in sight. Phase 1. The big milestone. On a bright March morning in her 3rd year, with the windows open to the kind of desert breeze that feels like a reprieve, Sarah sat at the same kitchen table where she'd once counted out quarters and cried. The final payment to the personal loan company blinked on her laptop screen, $1,612.47. Her fingers hovered. She looked to the right where the girls' homework used to sprawl, now replaced by client folders neatly labeled, a calculator, a mug of coffee gone cold. She clicked submit. The screen refreshed, balance 0.00. For a long moment she didn't move. She waited for a correction, an error message, some bureaucratic voice to say not yet. Nothing came. She closed the laptop with both palms as if blessing it, walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and cried in a way that left her light, as if tears could wash off years of fear. When she came out, Mia, now taller than last spring, stood in the hallway. "Is it done?" she asked. "It's done," Sarah said. "We're free of it." They celebrated at a family-run diner a few blocks away, the kind with scratch tables and a jukebox that still worked. She didn't check the right side of the menu first. She let Lila order a milkshake on a Tuesday. "We did it," she told them, and meant the we more than ever. Phase 2. Life transformation work swelled into a business with a name taped to the wall, Delgado Books, and a small logo Mia designed for an art project. She served 21 clients by the end of year 4. Auto shops, a bakery that smelled like cinnamon at dawn, a mobile dog groomer with the biggest laugh in Phoenix, a handyman who said numbers made him itch. Her annual income crossed $82,000, a number she read out loud to herself one evening and then sat with in quiet gratitude. She rented a modest 3-bedroom house in East Phoenix, a neighborhood with trees that shed leaves in satisfying heaps, and a porch light she could leave on without doing the mental math of kilowatt hours. Each girl had her own room. The first night, the house held a new kind of silence. No sirens, no arguments through thin walls, just the sound of the AC cycling and the small animal noises of a home getting to know its people. She slept 8 hours straight, woke with a soft ache behind her eyes and laughed. Her emergency fund grew to $12,400. She moved her IRA contribution to $250 a month, then $400, the balance reaching $19,700 by the time she noticed it without disbelief. She opened a college savings account for each girl, $2,000 to start, then $50 a month, explaining the magic of time with her hands, drawing compounding arcs on a scrap of paper at the kitchen table. The bank app stopped being a source of panic and became a dashboard she checked with the same calm she'd once faked. At Mia's high school graduation, the sky over Phoenix glowed amber with a sunset that made even the tired bleachers look blessed. When they called Mia's name along with partial scholarship, Sarah clapped until her palms stung. After the ceremony, Mia hugged her and said, "You're my hero, Mom." The words landed in a place no creditor's letter had ever reached. Lila, now 11, discovered a love for coding at a free Saturday workshop and built a silly budgeting game where cartoon dollars ran toward goals and away from desserts. They laughed and then played it seriously for half an hour because life was something they built together now, a giddy act of planning. Phase 3. Legacy moment. What she had learned felt too heavy to keep to herself. She went back to the South Phoenix Library on a Tuesday night, the same brick building where she'd first picked up a battered personal finance book and hope in the same hour, and offered a free workshop. Money basics for single parents. 8 people came. A woman in the second row cried silently during the part about collections calls. A man at the back asked, What if the numbers never work? And she said, they won't, at first, but there are levers to pull. She brought worksheets and the kind of empathy you only earn by surviving. She told stories without giving away names. She showed how to build an envelope system with zip-top bags. She taught one woman to call her credit card company and say, "This is a hardship plan request." She taught a man to track cash expenses for the first time in 20 years. At the end, someone said, "I thought I was the only one." She put a hand over her heart and said, "You're not." The second year of workshops, she set aside $3,000 from her business income and created a tiny fund, Fresh Start Micro Grants, to help cover books, exam fees and bus passes for people in certification programs. The first recipient, a young mother studying to become a medical coder, sent a handwritten card 6 months later. Got the job. Bought groceries without panic. Thank you. Sarah cried in her car in the library lot and then laughed at the symmetry of it. She met one-on-one with a neighbor drowning under payday loans, sat at their wobbly kitchen table and built a budget that included breathing. You don't have to know how, she told him. You just have to start. She slid a copy of her template across the table like a map. A community college invited her to speak to a night class. She felt her hands shake at the lectern and told the truth anyway. The text, the overdraft on a $4.79 charge, the freezer aisle, the drool on the page, the first zero balance, the exhale that changed nothing and everything. Afterward, a woman in a denim jacket said, "I was going to quit. I won't now." Phase 4. Emotional closure. On the hot June afternoon, 5 years after the day everything fell apart, Sarah drove down Central Avenue past the old apartment building in South Phoenix. The bars still gripped the windows. The asphalt in the lot was still cracked like a dry riverbed. She parked and sat for a minute with the engine off, the heat building in the cabin the way it does when summer throws its weight around. She thought about the woman who had lived here, frightened, hungry for certainty, counting out quarters on this very street. She saw herself on the bathroom floor, hand over mouth, and felt tenderness rather than shame. "I forgive you for everything you didn't know." She didn't step out. She didn't need to. Closure looked like a car idling in the place you used to brake and deciding simply to go home. Phase 5. The final reflection. Back at the house, the evening settled soft and blue. She sat at the kitchen table, the good one now, with legs that didn't wobble, and pulled the old spiral notebook from a box she kept in the hall closet. The first page was creased, the ink faded where tears had fallen. On a frantic line near the top, she had once written, "I don't know if I can do this." She uncapped a pen, the kind she'd have stolen from work once upon a time, and wrote beneath it, "You did." And it changed everything. Freedom, she realized, wasn't abundance. It was competence and courage braided together, night after night in the dark. It was a handful of practice skills, a phone call, a plan, a refusal to hide from numbers, stacked against fear until fear ran out of energy. It was the knowledge that no matter who left, no matter what bill arrived, she and her daughters could meet the world with a ledger and a stubborn heart. She closed the notebook. The house was quiet. Outside, the Phoenix sky burned itself into indigo. Inside, her daughters slept in rooms of their own. And on the wall above her desk, a certificate with her name caught the last of the light and waited, patient and constant, to remind her in the morning, "You are not who you were." Did this story touch you in any way? If so, leave your comment below. Share a moment from your life when you also needed to find strength, courage, or a fresh start. Stories like Sarah's remind us that transformation is possible, even on the most difficult days. Let's talk in the comments. Your experience can inspire others who are going through something similar. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow more stories that move, strengthen, and make you think. Together, we create a space of empathy, reflection, and growth. Activate the bell icon so you don't miss the next chapters.